And we are back, as always, and oh my god. I wish I was wrong about what we're about to talk about next, but
Oh no.
let me set this up for the audience. So, a couple days ago, I put out a video about the Bubonicon update because, as far as we know, nobody really went. A bunch of authors went, specifically this woman named Jeff A. Kennedy. Did you see my video on this?
I did see your video on it.
In my video about the author's Bubonicon update, I was being generous when I said she might have been mistaken because she said George was around 70% done. It's right around the same number he gave a few years back when he went on the Colbert Show. And what I was generous about is like, no, she's wrong. Because by her own admission, she doesn't know George that well, so it's possible she was just repeating something she'd heard years ago. No. Turns out George was the one who told her he was 70% complete. Somebody went to her Instagram blog video and they commented, I'm curious about when George told you he was going 70%, if it was something from years ago or recent. She replied back, recent.
Oh. So just to put in this context, and everything, because it wasn't just Colbert. He had there was a couple more interviews he did where he gave the 1,100 out of 1,500 pages or 75% number. He gave it at a couple, at least two, maybe three places around the same time. But when was the Colbert interview specifically?
The Colbert interview specifically was shortly after your...
Yeah, it was like 3 months after I uploaded my prediction progress video, where I predicted George was at 67%, and then it was October 2022 is when he went on Stephen Colbert, in which he gave a 75% figure. This was a few months after I gave the 67% guess. And so some people were like, Preston, he was about right. He was being a little pessimistic. But it is now 3 years since that interview with Stephen Colbert. It is now September of 2025. So we are 3 years. And now he told this friend of his that he is at 70%.
Not even his friend, just random woman he kind of knows. I think he's just telling people shit. I think he just likes to talk to people randomly about how he's not doing anything. Theory is mine now. That's one of my theories. You know, you have Pink Letter, Dorrit's Master Plan. I have George is insane.
Well, a lot of people, I tell the same, I realize I tell the same stories a lot. Especially when you get a wife, she recognizes like all of your stories. She knows all of your stories. And so when you're telling, your wife is always near you. But the thing is, you only have X number of stories in your repertoire. And so when you meet somebody and you're talking to them and you want to seem interesting, you throw out a story and it's all great and it's material. But I do realize that like my wife is sitting there quiet, having heard me tell that story like a dozen times. And she'll be quiet and be like, let him tell the story. She's heard it a dozen times, but the first time for this person. Feel like George's progress story is one of those things where he's like going around telling people 75% a lot. And it's just kind of automatic. It's just in his repertoire.
Every time something like this comes out, I feel a little vindicated in what I've been saying for years regarding George needing help with this, because this is something that is starting to seem impossible to do alone. I know the usual suspects are going to appear and screech that he said he doesn't want the help, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, but also, no, you're wrong. And the reason I feel vindicated in this is because I read this fairly old article from Adam Whitehead on his Word Zone blog. He's one of the moderators for Westeros.org, and apparently close enough to George that George made him a character in the books. And according to this article he put out on Ty Frank, the co-creator of The Expanse, it was Ty who convinced George back in 2005 to split the big book into Feast and Dance. And what do you know? When Ty Frank left to go do his own series, George didn't release another book for what is it now? 15 years? 14 years?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but we need this again. We need someone like this again because it sounds like George has enough manuscript pages for at least one book. But holy fuck, man, he needs someone with balls to come in and either help him or convince him to shit or get off the pot. It's just where I'm at right now. And every time something like this comes out, I feel vindicated on this position. And I know people love to come in and say, he doesn't owe you anything. George doesn't owe anybody anything. I don't owe you anything. Preston doesn't owe it. And nobody owes anybody anything. Sure, you're not saying something profound, but let's be real here. I want George to be more realistic with what's happening and what's going on instead of just saying, I'm working on it, because it doesn't seem like you are, homie. I love George to death. He's my guy. He's one of my favorite authors of all time. But I want him to be realistic and real with his fans. The people who have supported him still continue to buy his stuff, show up to all his cons, all that stuff. I just want him to be open and honest with it. But if what she's saying is correct, no progress in, 2 to 3 years? That's kind of crazy.
First of all, whether or not A Feast for Crows, A Dance with Dragons split was a good idea is a whole video in and of itself. We could talk forever about the pros and cons of that decision. Long story short, I think it was a good decision, but I know a lot of people that argue the other way, that the split is what really caused the problem. And I think there's good arguments on that side too. But man, let's do a whole video on that sometime. I'm sorry, audience people, if you wanted us to talk about was the split a good idea? But man, that's a whole topic. But yeah, I think you got to remember that when people get really rich and really powerful, they no longer, have people that question them and push them. You end up surrounded by sycophants, and George R. R. Martin went from a regular guy to being this larger than life, multimillionaire, fantasy god. And do you think anybody's going to be like, hey, George, you've got to sit down and do some writing today? Or, when he comes into the room and he says, I think I'm just going to go to the patio and enjoy the sun or something, or whatever, doing whatever he does. Are you gonna tell him no? Who are you to tell your employer what to do? You've had bosses in your life, right?
Of course.
How well have you been able to command around your boss?
Never.
Never.
Never. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. So it just doesn't happen. So it's, that's just not going to happen, especially as he gets richer and more powerful and more iconic. People aren't going to do it. This is my whole thing about why I didn't like The Departed, but you loved The Departed, but I think it was a sloppy movie. I feel like it was a really great first draft of a movie. And I'm cause no one's gonna say Scorsese, you need to change this. Maybe that rat at the end is a really stupid idea.
I think what I find equally as insane are the people who come out of nowhere to accuse us of hating on George because we're saying he should work on his magnum opus instead of doing whatever the hell else is he's doing. When he works on stuff to honor the memory of his friend Howard Waldrop, I think that's actually really awesome of him, and I'm all for that. But didn't he recently go to California to work with some scam company that pretty much lied about resurrecting the direwolf? No, come on. And this idea that we hate George because we criticize him is so childish. It's why I always rag on the younger generation for it, because only an immature child would think that the only way to show someone or something you love and appreciate them is by praising them 24/7 with no criticism. No, that's not how that works. For example, my mother can sometimes drive like a crazy person, and I get on her case about it all the time. Does that mean I hate my mom? Of course not. No. I love George. But come on, my man, almost 3 years and no progress? Really? I think that's why I'm going to sniff on some copium right now and hope that Jeff A. Kennedy is wrong.
I think there's a few things going on. I think that, you want people to be excited about the series and think that it's coming. And so if you're going to release a theory video, something or anything like that, you don't want to, people don't want to watch a video pumping them up for something that's not coming.
Fair.
Like imagine watching a movie. Imagine watching a movie trailer for a movie that's not going to come out. Like you want a movie trailer for movies that come out, that you can actually see. So in many ways, YouTube videos are like trailers in the sense that you're getting previews, you're getting hyped up about what might happen. And if you come to the conclusion that it's not coming, then what's the point of getting hyped about it?